Good afternoon, everyone.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today's PLC is going to start in 1 moment. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's PLC. The title is a certification program for healthcare CPD professionals. Before we start, let me do a quick recap. Last month, the PLC was on the elevator speech. We had some great ideas that people have worked on thinking about what an elevator speech could be, and that has been posted on the SACME website. So please go check out what others have written. Use that for some good ideas of your own. And please, when you come up with some ideas, please put them up there so that we can share for our own professional development. So like I said, today's session is on a certification program for healthcare CPD professionals, and this is being presented by Melinda Steel. Melinda was the manager at Texas Tech, and now she is the executive director of the program. So with that short introduction, let me pass things over to Melinda Steel. Melinda?
Thank you, Jack. It's a pleasure to be with you all today. As you can see from the title slide, we're going to talk about a certification program for healthcare CPD professionals. This organization was previously known as NCCME, the National Commission for Certification of CME Professionals. And as of January, we'll talk about the name change of both the credential and the organization as we go along. First of all, for disclosure, I have no relevant financial relationships with any commercial entities, and I work as the executive director for the Commission via contract with my consulting company, Confluence Educational Consulting. So to begin, let me give you some background and the beginnings of how this all started. The Commission was actually incorporated in 2008 as a 501c nonprofit. It began with a group of CME professionals. If I were to give you a list of the names of the people who were involved in the founding and on the advisory board, it would sound like a list of who's who in CME with very seasoned professionals who were the ones who instigated and started the program and the certification. We work with a testing vendor called Schroeder Measurement Technologies, and you can read there on the screen some of the information about how the test is written, how it's validated, the kinds of things that are on the test. And we're going to go in more depth as to what the domains of the test are and what we actually test upon. That's how we began. But just recently, there has been a significant change in the organization. Prior to January 1st, we were very CME-centric, and we tested only CME professionals and only dealt with the scope of content for CME professionals. Our board aligned with the competencies from the Alliance National Learning Competencies, and with that, chose to change our name and the credential. And you can see there on the screen, we went from NCCME to CCHCP, standing for the Commission for Certification of Healthcare CPD Professionals. And the credential, which used to be CCMEP, is now CHCP. And as I said, we've aligned with the National Learning Competencies of the Alliance that describe the abilities needed for success in professional development for CE practitioners. We will be updating our exam. It's actually in development at this time. The big change is that it will be interprofessional in scope. We're looking at modular exams in the future where we may have basic content in a baseline exam and then modules that enhance or select specific areas of competence. We're also looking at a master level certification, which may not necessarily be an exam, but may be a combination of practical activities. And I'm going to use the term loosely, similar to what you might see in MOC, where you're maintaining certification and demonstrating and maybe a practicum or some kind of demonstration activity, your competence. We're looking at other alternatives to our current single exam. Due to launch in September of this year is an associate exam or certificate. We're almost ready to send that off to the test development company for them to put it into the system and get it ready to go live. This will be a certificate exam, not a certification. It will be an entry-level exam that has only 50 questions versus 150 on our professional level exam. So these are some of the changes that we've been working on over the last 2 years and are now coming to fruition since the beginning of January. So let's talk about what certification is. The certification model is not just an exam and not just boom, you have a certification. It is built upon having experience, education, and then a competency exam, which leads to your certification. When we talk about certification, CCHP is the only credential that designates qualified individuals as certified healthcare CPD professionals. Now, why is that important? For a long time, those of us working in this field have felt like we needed to be recognized as a profession and not just a job. And if you look at most professions, they have certification or credentialing exams. Think about engineers, accountants, even baristas, certain specialties within the healthcare fields, plumbers, lots of professions that are recognized as professions, you will find that they have a certification or certification exam. As we've tried to move our field into a profession, one of those things that was missing was a certification. And that was part of the premise of the folks who founded and began the organization and started with the first certification exam. So as we look at what's the difference between certificate and certification, you know, lots of us have completed courses where you get a certificate of completion. We even give a certificate of credit to physicians and other healthcare professionals when they attend our events. But a certification is something that's more significant. On the slide, I say it goes on a business card, but it's more than that. It's the credential that identifies your proficiency or competence in a specific area. So what are the goals of becoming certified? It's so that when you talk to other people in the field, whether it's your employers or people you're applying grants or learners, they can be sure that you understand and have at least a minimum level of competence and a minimum level of experience and knowledge, that you know what you're doing, you know what accreditation is, you know what adult learning principles are, etc. So that's the goal of becoming certified, where there is a standard of knowledge and a standard of competence in the field. So when we began the process, many different organizations were consulted. One in particular that is actually an organization that recognizes people who do certification, and it's the Institute for Credentialing Excellence, or ICE, formerly known as NOCA. These are the things that NOCA said were the benefits of being certified in whatever your profession. But I want you to pay particular attention to that bottom line, to establish a professional standard for individuals in a particular field. And that's exactly what we try to do, is demonstrate and establish a minimum level of competency and professional standard for individuals working in the healthcare CPD field. So what's in it for you? For you, certification can help you to demonstrate that you're in a career path and not just a job, to acknowledge your excellence in this particular career, It provides evidence of your competence. If you can pass a competency exam, it demonstrates that you are competent to do this particular thing. It helps you to do your own self-assessment and to own your own continuing professional development. Owning your own continuing professional development is an aspect of continuing to be certified, because as you recertify or extend your certification, one of the key elements in that process is demonstrating that you have continued with your own professional development, your own CE credit, so to speak. With an employer, it can actually serve as a rationale for you to demonstrate you're deserving of a promotion. And it also demonstrates your baseline capabilities when you're job hunting. A number of organizations in all types of providers are requiring or indicating that they prefer to hire people who have this certification. There are specialty societies that do this, there are MECs, there are academic centers that do this, and I'm quite proud to say that the very first organization who put in a job description that a CCMEP was preferred or required was when I retired from Texas Tech. The job description for my replacement, that was the first organization who put in their job description that they preferred or required the certification. And many others have followed suit and either expect you to have it or expect you to be in the process of obtaining it. So the current exam, which will run for about the next 18 months to 2 years, has these content outline domains. You can see that they're areas that should be very familiar to you if you've worked in the field even only a couple of years. These particular domains, when we aligned them with the National Learning Competencies that came out, we found that there was almost total overlap with very few exceptions. So the current exam has these domains, and as I stated, the new exams are going to be aligned with the National Learning Competencies and have 8 domains, and the next slide will show you what those domains are. So the new version of the professional exam, which will be interprofessional in scope, will launch probably sometime in 2016, depending on the length of the exam development process. It possibly will be modular with options of a basic exam and add-on modules for special content areas. The Healthcare CPD Associate will launch, the certificate exam will launch in September. Another area that we're looking at is the Master's Certification, where we combine your professional certification with practice-based application projects. And after the new professional exam, the projected launch for that is sometime 2017 or beyond. So the new learning competencies that the Alliance put out have these 8 domains on them. They're very similar to the 5 content domains we had previously aligned our exam with. And when we evaluated and took a look at where our current exam and our future exams fall with these competencies, the alignment is the same. The other areas that are possible that will be added to the new professional competency exam include things like MOC, QI, and the Sunshine Act, and whatever stage it's in at the time the exam is released. The exam periods are the 4 exam periods you see here once a quarter, March, June, September, and December. March, June, and September, it's from the 13th to the end of the month. The December one is the entire month. And the registration deadlines are the last day of the month prior to your exam month. So for March, it would be the end of February, for June, the end of May, etc. So the eligibility requirements to sit for the exam encompass your education, your experience, your continuing professional development, your volunteer work in healthcare CPD organizations like SACME, the Alliance, AMI, NAMEC, etc. There is a worksheet. It's actually a spreadsheet where you indicate the activities that you're claiming points for. It calculates your points. It's found on the website for the organization. It's downloadable. You complete it, and then you're able to upload it on the website to have it reviewed and approved. All of this is found on our website, including the certification process, the eligibility process, the registration links, and then have the process for recertification, which once you become certified, you want to pay particular attention to those so that you can be ready when recertification comes along, because it will encompass, again, your experience, your own continuing professional development, and your activity within the field. The current cost of the exam is $450, with recertification every 3 years at $395. What we're finding is there's a mix of people who their organizations will pay for the exam and recertification, and others that pay for it on their own. So it's a mix of how that gets paid for. Currently, there are no actual exam prep courses other than the CALL CCMEP prep course that the Alliance produced. And because of that, we've decided to step into the exam preparation educational product space. The CALL CCMEP prep course is still valid while the current exam is out there through the end of this year and part of next, but it will be obsolete once we go to the interprofessional exam that's in development currently. We're in the process of developing exam prep workshops, virtual courses via webinar similar to this one, workbooks, and other products. We're currently working on a partnership with the Alliance for educational offerings covering the national learning competencies. And I'll indicate there that if you prepare yourself, self-assess, and then look at the national learning competencies and work on your weak areas there, that's going to be great preparation for the new exam. We also want to develop exam prep materials, and we do it together, sharing both the product development, and then when we sell that product, we'll share the profits as well. And interestingly, the very first product that we have to offer for exam preparation is coming up very, very soon. There will be a pre-conference workshop at the Alliance's Industry Summit in May. And we'll be doing that the day before that starts on May the 11th from 2 to 4 p.m. in the afternoon. It will be in Philadelphia at the Lowe's Philadelphia Hotel. And if you look carefully at what's offered there on that screen, anybody who takes this workshop, the registration fee is $150. You'll get free access to the practice exam, which is a $45 value, and then a $50 discount on the current version of the exam if it's taken by the end of 2015. So for $150 registration, you're actually going to accrue $95 in discounts. There is a link on this slide to the registration, but the good news is Jim informed me right before the webinar today that this has been posted on the SACNY website under non-SACNY events. So all of this information is on the SACNY website, and you can click the link to be able to register for that. You do not have to be registered for nor attending the Alliance Industry Summit to register for this workshop. It's totally separate. It's just in the same. So this is my contact information. And if there are any questions or discussion or anything further that I can provide you about the certification exam, about the process, or anything that you have questions about, I'll be glad to do so. So, Jack, I will turn it back to you.
Great. Thank you, Melinda. And this is now time for questions. There are a couple ways that you could do it. Your microphone can be unmuted or you could type your question into the box, which is on the lower right-hand corner of your screen, and I will read that, and Melinda will be able to answer those questions. So why don't we start by posing, if there are any questions, please pose them now. Well, while we're waiting for the first questions to come in, let me pose a question to Melinda. Melinda, I'm pretty comfortable where I am now. I don't have a CCMEP certification, and it's not required in my job. Maybe for the person who succeeds me, maybe that'll be a requirement. Why should I get for me?
Well, let me answer that by giving you a little background on the kinds of people that were the very first to take the exam. Like I said, when we were developing this, it was like an all-star who's who list of people. Most of the people had 20-plus years of experience. One of the things that people in that category, and I was one of those as well, the reason we took the exam, or the reason these other folks took the exam, was to support the fact that we want to demonstrate that we are truly a profession, and that to have the certification demonstrates that you're a professional, and it puts us on a landscape where the others outside of our organizations, outside of the field, can recognize that we're not just merely doing a job. We are professionals with a professional certification. And I hear your concern that, I've been in this field for, 20-plus years. Why do I need a certification? Those people who begin this said that it's important for everyone, not just the beginner, not just the intermediate, but for even those of us that have been in the profession 20-plus years, to demonstrate professional competence and to demonstrate that we are a profession and not just a job.
Okay, thank you, Melinda. No, so far nobody has typed in any questions, so now would be the time to start typing if you have a question.
Jack, do you see Bonnie Burton has her hand raised?
Oh, boy. Jim, can you get that? I'm not sure how to take care of that.
Yeah, Bonnie, are you there?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Bonnie, I could hear you.
Bonnie, I think your microphone may be unmuted, so why don't you talk?
Okay. I was just going to ask, if you go ahead and get certified now, will it still be good for another 3 years, or when they go to the new system, do you have to recertify?
So, Melinda, did you get that? Bonnie, is you're certified now. Does that take you forward, or for the next 3 years, or does one have to recertify when the new process begins?
Okay. Once you've taken the exam, you're certified, and you never have to take the exam again. The recertification process is that at the end of the 3 years, you actually complete an additional worksheet, which again gives your continuing professional development since you certified, any new degrees you've earned since you certified, any professional development activities, volunteer work in organizations related to your CPD. So the certification process is actually you owning
Melinda was cut off. Melinda, are you still there?
I am still here, Jack. When that noise came on, I think I got cut off.
Okay. So proceed.
But the recertification process is taking care of your own
Melinda, something happened and you dropped out again.
Well, the only comment I made was the certification process every 3 years is taking care of your own continuing professional development, making sure you stay informed, making sure that you're still engaged in the healthcare CPD environment. Those worksheets for recertification can be found on our website if you're interested in seeing what it's like after you've completed the exam and become certified. You can see the kinds of things that would be required, a number of points for recertification.
Okay, we have a question from from Ginny Jacobs asking about how you're planning on incorporating MOC, QI, and other emerging issues in CPD.
Those items, and Jenny, thanks for that question. I'll mention before I answer that, Jenny was among one of the first classes to become certified. There's many SACME members who are certified. Jenny, the way we intend to incorporate that is we look at the new interprofessional exam and the possibility of doing modular approaches to that, where there would be a baseline exam common to everyone, for instance, adult learning principles and things of that nature, possibly including modules that would incorporate questions on MOC or QI or whatever that specific content would be. So those things will be incorporated into the new exam. The modular approach, they'll be basic. They wouldn't be specific to a specific MOC group like ABIM or some other specialty group. Would be general on the MOC process. But if we do a modular approach, it would allow us, as there are changes in the scope of things, that we could make changes to those modules without having to redo the entire exam. So with QI, and I can't make this as an assertion, but I can say we're talking to the Alliance about their QI initiatives and incorporating a lot of what they're doing there as a QI piece into the exam as well. All of this is still in development, still being processed, so I don't have definitive answers other than to tell you we will incorporate those pieces.
Okay, thank you, Melinda. We have a question from Maria Sullivan asking what type of exam prep will be at that pre-conference workshop.
Well, the exam prep at this pre-conference is going to be talking more about how do you go about preparing. It won't necessarily go over content and give you specifics of content, but more of what are the resources you need to be looking at? What kinds of things should you be doing to prepare? We'll even talk about some test-taking strategies. So it won't be like a class where you're learning what the competencies are and demonstrating that you understand that. This particular workshop is more, how do I go about making preparations to take the exam? And I'll be presenting along with Maureen Doyle-Scarf, who is our president-elect of our board, and the two of us will be presenting, and there'll be a couple of other people that are either volunteer room as well.
Okay. Question was, what is the minimum required test score?
It's a scale test score much like if you're all familiar with either an SAT or a GRE exam. So it's not a percentage of questions. There is a weighting of the questions depending on the degree of difficulty. So it's not necessarily a particular score. There is a cut score that's established by the testing organization. But it's a pass-fail exam. So when the scores are reported back to the exam taker, and they're usually reported immediately right after you've taken the exam, except for beta test groups of new versions, you get a letter indicating whether you passed or whether you failed the exam.
Okay. Melinda, there's another question asking about people who've already been certified. How is the interprofessional education aspects going to be incorporated into folks who already have their certification?
As you already have your certification, as I stated earlier, you will not have to retake the exam. What we'll do is we will most likely integrate that component into the recertification worksheets where you have to demonstrate your own continuing professional development. That worksheet will more than likely have components in there where we'll be asking you to demonstrate certain different kinds of things. Like, for instance, we may want to know that you've done some webinars or done some education that deals with interprofessional types of CE. Or we may ask you to demonstrate that you've read professionally in the journals or other publications. So depending on what those specialty areas are, in particular interprofessional, certification process will demonstrate that in what we require on those worksheets.
Okay. Melinda, question from Farhan Vakani asking about the international nature of CPD. There are people now who are in CPD that now affects different parts of the world. For instance, ACCME is in discussion about accreditation with other countries. So how will this particular certification relate to people from other countries? What about eligibility, for instance?
We're actually not advocating at the current time international certification, although we do have a few people who have taken it. And that's only if they're working with ACCME accredited or ACPE or ANCC accredited providers. The projected next steps beyond what I've outlined for you in our strategic process is that we're going to be talking with GAME. They're already in discussions that they're interested in wanting to move to an international certification, which will be much like what we're doing currently. But that's quite a bit further down the line. We haven't done a lot of strategic planning along that other than to say, yes, there's interest, and yes, we'll talk about that. Right now, the exam we have is very much North American-centric, and it deals mainly with ACCME, ACPE, and ANCC, and AAPA accredited providers. The only international people that we have are those that are working with those types of providers.
Okay, thank you, Melinda. Question from Joyce Soprano. How many people have taken the test so far?
I'm glad you asked that. As of today, there have been well over 500 people who have taken the test. They're in the range of 425 to 435, and the reason I say that is we're right in the middle of an exam cohort right now who have actually passed the test. It's an 80% pass rate generally on the test, but close to 100 people have taken it at this time.
Okay. Another question from Ginny asking about a special designation for certified meeting planners with a specialization with another, based on another exam. Can you speak about any other certifications in HCP designation?
I'm only vaguely familiar with the CMP medical educator certification, and I can only hearsay things about that. But theirs is more meeting plan eccentric, from what I understand, than it is professional education certification. I'm not advocating or not advocating either way on that particular certification, other than to say ours really does look at the healthcare CPD educational process and the learning competencies that have been established for our profession.
Okay, I see that Karen Edmondson, you have your hand up. Let me unblock your microphone. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm a previous certificant, and I'm wondering if we will receive revised certificates that list CHCP.
Yes, that's a great question. Glad you asked that. We have begun, when we're at various conferences, handing out the new lapel pins. We did that in January at the Alliance meeting. I'll have them with me at the SACME meeting for those of you who have not obtained your new lapel pin with CHCP. But the certificates, what we're doing is it's number one, time intensive and cost intensive. And so as the various groups are recertifying, I am working with those groups first to send them their new certificate, and then I'm working through batches so that, let's say you're one that has just recertified last year, the first group that I'll start working after this year's cohorts to start sending certificates. It takes some time due to both my time and money of getting those mailed and prepared, etc. But yes, everyone will be receiving a new certificate with CHCP. And you can pick up your lapel pins, and as I mail certificates, I'll mail new lapel pins to those who haven't picked them up.
Okay. So we have just 1 second here. We have another couple questions. Okay. If one is already CCMEP certified, does one have to take another exam to be CCHCP certified?
No. In fact, that certification, if you are a CCMEP, you can immediately change those letters to CHCP. That change as of January 1st, and everyone who is a CCMEP currently is, quote, translated to CHCP, so you may make that change now immediately.
Okay, a question from Lou Salazar. What is the recertification rate, and how many who initially certified go on to recertify?
Okay, let me answer the last part of that question first. But the recertification rate is just like the exam pass rate. It still hovers right around between 75 to 85%. So an average of 80% of people who are certified do go on to recertify their credential. Some of the reasons why people have not certified has nothing to do with their lack of interest of wanting to or lack of points. Sometimes it's their employers won't pay for it, and so that's an issue that we've grappled with in trying to find ways to work with people on that. But the actual recertification process currently, the end of your certification, you will receive an email about 3 months before it expires, and the first cycle you do what's called an extension of certification, and it costs $275 for an additional 2 years. After that additional 2 years, then it's every 3 years you recertify, and that cost is $395. We are toying and experimenting with, rather than doing every 3 years at $395, we're considering some options like maybe an annual maintenance fee that would be much less than that $395, and then recertifying only every so often. But that's just one of those things we're thinking about. The board and the executive committee have talked about it but have not made any decisions. But if people tell us that they could more likely just pay an annual maintenance fee and then every 3 years demonstrate their recertification with the CPD and experience, et cetera, we may move to that kind of model if folks tell us that that's a model that they can deal with better.
Okay, Melinda, we have a question asking, what advice would you offer for those individuals who are uncertain about how to proceed from here? For instance, they have some CME and CPB background, and their office budget is tight in terms of purchasing study materials. Can someone have a self-guided approach to prepare themselves for the exam?
Absolutely. And I think one of those approaches, if you can't afford to go or purchase courses or go to workshops or whatever, one of the ways that you can prepare yourself is to look at the national registry that's on our website. Look at who you know that's already certified that you might seek out as a mentor. You could put together self-study groups where a group of you might do by conference call once a month or once every 2 months. Looking at reading materials that align with the learning competencies. The first step I would suggest is to get a copy of the National Learning Competencies and self-assess. Look at where you stand within those learning competencies. Where are you novice? Where are you intermediate? Where do you need the most work? Where do you feel the most comfortable that you fit on those competencies? And then hone in on resources that address those particular things. For instance, if you're not very comfortable in adult learning principles, do some searches in the literature for materials that deal with adult learning principles, or seek out a mentor who probably has expertise in that area. So there are lots of ways that you can, progress on your own, But as long as you're sticking with those learning competencies, the national learning competencies, and honing in on those areas, you should be able to prepare yourself adequately to take the exam.
Okay, thank you, Melinda. I don't see any more questions that have been submitted, and I don't see any hands up. So let me take a brief pause, and now would be the time for any questions that haven't been asked to have you either raise your hand or start typing them in.
May I also suggest that after this webinar, we always think about questions after we're completely through with an activity, but you can always email me with those questions, and I'll be glad to respond to those individually or personally, as well as I will be at the SACME meeting in Tampa, so if you have questions or want to discuss something further, I'm glad to talk with you there in Tampa while we're there at our spring meeting.
Okay, thank you, Melinda. Well, nobody has raised their hand, and there are no more questions that have been typed in. So why don't we draw this session to a close. I thank all of you for attending, and Melinda, thank you so much for leading today's discussion. You did a really terrific job, and on behalf of SACME, we really appreciate all of your efforts. Again, a reminder, go to the SACME website and look at what has been posted on the elevator speech, and after you have thought of some good ideas for elevator speeches of your own, please post them and share them with others. There's not going to be a PLC for April because that's going to be replaced by the SACME conference and will proceed from there in June. So I'll try that again. It'll be in May. This will be the April conference that's going to supersede. So again, thank you all, and have yourself a wonderful afternoon.